Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's a Monday during the football season, which can only mean one thing. It's a Michigan Monday. Wolverines played Hawai'i on Saturday, and I think we need to give this show every bit as much time as it deserves to really break this game down. So that'll do it. We will see you guys next week. Bye now.
Yeah, pretty much. And as you can look at the 56-10 score and know that it was not that close. It was kept that way because Jim Harbaugh was like, you know what? I'm a college coach. I don't want to hurt young people. I'm here to build up young people. We don't need to do this to the Hawai'i football team or to Timmy Chang, whom everybody that has ever been part of college football adores. So respects to him for taking the high road and losing against the spread.
Yeah, it was, this is one where you could watch the first 5 minutes of this game and know, Michigan could just name whatever score. Does Jim Harbaugh want to score like a fraction of a point? I'm sure he can find a way to do it in this game. There was a point in the first 11 minutes of the game where Michigan had 3 touchdowns and Hawai'i had one play longer than 2 yards. It was like, that pretty much sums it up. And it was, Harbaugh could not only score touchdowns whenever he wanted to, but score touchdowns however he wanted to. It was like, Roman Wilson, he's from Honolulu. Let's get him the first touchdown of the game. And then, you know what? We'll get him one on an end around a little later on in the drive. And then, I don't know, Ronnie Bell, he missed all last year. It'd be great to get him a score in the first quarter. We'll do that, okay. And then, Donovan Edwards had a really nice catch down the sideline. Let's just let him punch this one in. It was just not only name your score, but name how you wanted to score. If there was not another team on the field for the first 30 minutes of that game, I don't know how much different it would have looked.
No, it was like Jim Harbaugh was out there playing with the Star Wars guys. Like, I'm going to put you over here, and then you're going to fight this guy, and then we're going to then we're going to have this battle over here. Just putting guys wherever he wanted and doing however he wanted. Like, if there was, he could have created a scoregami of whatever he wanted, like a score that has never happened before in college football, and he'd be like, you know what, I want this game to be 46-5. Now let's go make it happen. And they could have made it happen, and probably by the end of the first half, actually. They could have made it 46-5. Then he's like, you know what, let's make the second half 39-4, and let's go do that, because you'd have to have the Michigan offense involved in actually scoring for Hawaii's offense as well with those 2 safeties. And plus, I mean, this is the Big Ten after all, Tom.
Yeah, and you got to get the punter some work. So that's you can have the punter take step out the back of the end zone, take 3 knees, have the punter take the snap, step out of the back of the end zone, take the intentional safety, keep everyone involved in the game. That's just good team management.
I was looking. So JJ McCarthy got the start at quarterback and for Michigan, and this is probably the focus of this show because honestly, there's nothing else to focus on. Tom's got some stats, and we'll get into that as well to let you know that Hawai'i is not the best team you'll ever see. JJ McCarthy goes 11 of 12 passing for 229 yards with 3 touchdowns. The lone incompletion was a drop by Ronnie Bell. It was a little behind Ronnie Bell, but one that he got 2 hands on and probably should have caught. But Ronnie Bell, I think, is still shaking some of the rust off. He made up for it later on and made some tough plays. But if JJ McCarthy had enough attempts, like if he qualified to be the Big Ten passing efficiency leader, he would have that spot by like 50 points over, or nationally rather, like the 50 points over the next guy. And he'll get the start next week against Connecticut. And, he'll be up there after that one probably for sure. The thing that, again, this is Hawai'i, so can't make too much of this. This season, and Colorado State to open the season, JJ McCarthy is averaging 16.5 yards per rush, 16.2 yards per pass attempt. So basically, every snap that he receives that he doesn't give to somebody else, that he doesn't hand off, Michigan is picking up 16 yards. That's ridiculous. And for the Michigan Monday that I write up, I'll probably go through and just see the average depth of his passes and go back and look at some of the Cade McNamara stuff. Because while he does do some short passes that everybody does, like he looks down the field, and he looks down the field a lot, and he's fun to watch.
He is fun to watch, and he is maybe the most dynamic quarterback we've seen Michigan have in. I mean, if I say John Navarre, no, I mean it really this is like the most dynamic, legitimate dual threat quarterback they've had maybe ever. I mean, everyone is going to be saying, what about Denard Robinson? It's like, well, I think JJ McCarthy might be a better passer than Denard Robinson by a comfortable amount. So this is a really dynamic and exciting Michigan offense, which we'll see what it looks like when they play a team with a pulse. And I mean, they do have to play a team with a pulse at some point, not next week. Just go ahead and run this week's show back for next week. But I mean, you mentioned 16 yards per play, basically every time JJ McCarthy does anything with the football. In the second quarter of the game, Michigan had three players, other than Cade McNamara, who took a sack. Three people carried the ball: C.J. Stokes, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards. They had 2 carries, 3 carries, and 2 carries respectively. All 3 of them had a 20-yard rush in the second quarter alone. Michigan, 17 plays for 222 yards in the second quarter. Hawaii, 13 plays for 15 yards. So that's basically 13 yards a play to about 1 yard a play. So, we've explained this before, but I feel like this might be useful context for, people who are not necessarily listening to every single one of these shows we do. Todd Graham left the Hawai'i program as basically a smoking crater last year, to the point where they had like state senate hearings about Todd Graham's handling of the football program. And so he left. They were not great last year. And then they had just a million guys hit the portal. I think they lost 20 guys, something like that, to the transfer portal. So essentially everyone who is not a native Hawaiian who was like, I would like to go somewhere else, went somewhere else. So this is, Timmy Chang is, this is way too soon to judge his program right now. 2 years from now might be too soon to judge his program. Like it is going to take some real digging to get him out of the hole. So this was, in May, we could have told you exactly how this game went. And I think we probably did tell you exactly how this game was going to go. And then it went that way. So, yes, Michigan looked incredibly explosive, but, Ohio State played Arkansas State, and Arkansas State is currently 116th in the country in SP+. So it's like, wow, there's only 15 teams in the country worse than Arkansas State right now. Hawaii is worse than Arkansas State. Hawaii, in fact, on a neutral field, would be a 12-point underdog to Arkansas State. So Arkansas State, which everyone kind of looked at for Ohio State and went, oh, this is one of the worst teams I've ever seen, they would be favored by 12 points over Hawaii. So that probably puts things in some context in terms of how much you can really take from this one game.
So from that 118 you said of Arkansas State to Hawaii is 12 spots. What is 12 spots up from Arkansas State, to give us an idea? Like, how far up is that?
I didn't look at. I don't have that in front of me right now, but it was basically you went from 0 to 0, just like average, was probably somewhere on the 70 or 80 mark, down to about 120 or 121. It was like Charlotte was like a -17, so that's just a couple points worse than Arkansas State. And then it just goes off a cliff at the very bottom. And it's, Hawaii and UMass and FIU and all the teams that are, just like complete dumpster fires and going to remain complete dumpster fires for a few years. Like, you could be 120th in the country. Charlotte has been a disaster this year, and they're 9 points better than Hawaii right now. So, yeah, there's work to do on the islands, but, I don't know that you can conclusively draw anything, as like a real definitive take on Michigan right now, but they haven't given you any reason to doubt that they're going to be pretty dynamic and explosive with JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, I think this Hawaii team is probably a bad FCS team at this point. Scholarship wise, they're kind of at that level, and just overall talent, and because you could bring in a pretty good FCS team and they would probably run through Hawaii and just run over them and do whatever they wanted to. So that gives you an idea of the level of talent that was on the field against Michigan. And I feel like we need to continue to use that as the caveat as we speak of the positives of Michigan, particularly JJ McCarthy, because for the first time in however long, and I realize I don't want to be the Beano Cook talking about Ron Powlus and his 3 Heismans and, throwing that on somebody. And I'm not going to speak of Heismans, but I think for the first time in a very long time, Michigan has a quarterback that is no longer holding Michigan back or just going along for the ride. Like, he can pull them along, I think. I think we will find out that he can bring them along. And I'm wondering, the last Michigan quarterback that could do that, Devin Gardner was fantastic in 2013 against Ohio State in that one game. Other games, he was hit and miss. Denard Robinson, every year he started as a quarterback, he threw double-digit interceptions, except for maybe like 1 year when he was splitting time. Devin Gardner as a starting quarterback, double-digit interceptions. So they could make plays, but then they could also kill you. And they were also completing 55, 60% of their passes. JJ McCarthy at this point, I think, is completing like 93% of his passes this season. That's not going to stay. But he can keep plays alive. He can make plays. He can make all of the throws. I wanted to see how accurate he would be in this game. And, well, he was 11 for 12 with one drop. So I just, for me, he is as good as I can remember, at least potentially. And I understand that what I'm saying now may come back when he is 6 of 16 against Maryland. That's not going to happen, but there will be some ups and downs. But I don't know that I've seen a Michigan quarterback since Drew Henson who had like every ability. And of course, Drew Henson really didn't pan out for Michigan if you look back on his career and how things turned out. So I'm not saying that's going to happen with JJ McCarthy, but I don't know what the downside is yet with him, because all we've seen so far is upside. And I think he's a guy that Ohio State fans need to be wary of.
This is, I think this is the first quarterback that Ohio State fans really need to be concerned about since, maybe it is Henson, because, Chad Henne had his moments, but he was pretty one-dimensional. And, you sort of had the Michigan coaching staff holding him back a little bit in some ways just because they were so rigid in what they wanted to do at that point. I can't think of, Michigan is just not a team that has won with dynamic quarterbacks, which is why it's just wild that, the greatest NFL quarterback of all time came from Michigan. And, I know everyone in Michigan loves him now, but I was old enough to be there. And let me tell you, none of you were rooting for Tom Brady to be the quarterback at Michigan back then. Everyone wanted Drew Henson. And, and I think Drew Henson's career there kind of gets an incomplete because George Steinbrenner stole him away and had him go play third base for the Columbus Clippers for a while. You wonder what Drew Henson's career would have looked like with one more year, with the 2001 season there. You wonder what Jim Tressel's 310-day guarantee would have looked like if it was Drew Henson and not John Navarre playing quarterback that year up in Ann Arbor. But, Henson was dynamic and put up 38 points at Ohio Stadium in 2000 to beat Ohio State and had a bootleg to score the kind of game-clinching touchdown there. He was a very dynamic quarterback, and I think had he played 2001, he probably would have been someone who Ohio State fans were really terrified of. Since then, you go through the list, and it's just John Navarre and Chad Henne, and I'm just going to go ahead and skip over the first couple of years of the Rich Rod era and just skip right to QB Force and Denard Robinson and Devin Gardner, and it's just,
Jake Rudock.
Ryan Mallett. Ryan Mallett, I guess in theory was scary and never really put it together there. It just has not been that guy really. And then since Harbaugh got there, you have very famously talked about how QBs just sort of get worse. And, the longer they've been around Jim Harbaugh, the QB's play just sort of gets worse. So I guess we'll see if JJ McCarthy develops Harbaugh poisoning at some point in the next couple of years and sees his career, sort of slowly slide downhill. But it's early and the competition has been non-existent, but he sure does look, he looks like a quarterback who Ryan Day was seriously thinking about offering a couple of years ago. It was Kyle McCord versus JJ McCarthy. And, everyone wants to start litigating that already. And it's like, well, Kyle McCord hasn't gotten a chance to start really outside of one game against Akron as a true freshman where he looked perfectly good. So, it's probably too soon to really litigate that one as far as, right decision, wrong decision. But you haven't seen anything that was like, well, right, JJ McCarthy's a bum and this isn't a conversation at all. Like it is potentially going to be a very significant conversation next year in Ann Arbor if it is Kyle McCord versus JJ McCarthy on the field in Michigan Stadium.
It's funny. that you bring that up because I saw a post on the Huddle message board and the title was something like, did Ryan Day go with the wrong quarterback? And I was, when I see stuff like that on the internet, it's Dwayne Haskins versus Joe Burrow. And I was like, do we have another Haskins Burrow, argument and post thread on the board? And I click on it and it's like, no, it's JJ McCarthy versus Kyle McCord. This is fantastic. But also, when Ryan Day chose McCord over McCarthy, like those two guys were going to be linked forever from that point on. And it's something we'll be watching. But like you said, well, let's make the judgment once we've actually been able to see guys start for an entire season and go, have the opportunity to start for an entire season. Kyle McCord has not yet had that opportunity. If he gets beat out next year, then he's had the opportunity. But at this point, there's no reason to get worked up over JJ McCarthy starting at this point if you're trying to compare the two, because he wouldn't be starting if he was at Ohio State. JJ McCarthy would not be starting at this point. Kyle McCord would probably be getting ready to start or already starting at Michigan if he had gone there. So then you'd be like, did Ryan Day make a mistake going with JJ McCarthy over Kyle McCord? Circumstances change for the players in terms of how quickly they play. And so we'll see next year. But yeah, I like that argument, that comparison, because you've got that with, Kareem Walker and I don't know, Antonio Williams or whatever, and it's like just trying to keep all of these names in place.
What an incredible career battle that turned out to be. Kareem Walker and Antonio Williams. That's
Derek Green and like Ezekiel Elliott. I don't even remember back then, where you have these guys that could go to either place. Ohio State chooses somebody like Robert Smith and what's his face?
Tony Fisher? No, Tony Fisher. Tony Fisher went to the same high school. That's why I'm linking them in my brain.
Ricky Powers.
Yeah.
When Ricky Powers chose to go to Michigan because he didn't want to go to Ohio State and be there with Robert Smith, and that's one of the fun things about this rivalry is you have these guys that are tied to each other forever. And the other thing that I really, really like about JJ McCarthy is he can put to use everything around him. And that's not something that Cade McNamara was able to do. The downfield throws, as we were talking about earlier, makes everybody better, makes the running game better. Cade McNamara brought the defense closer, makes it harder to run. The receivers, I don't think, can necessarily rely on McNamara to get the ball to them where they can do the most with it in downfield. I think receivers now can just continue to do what they're doing because JJ McCarthy can get them the ball down the field. They can continue to just expect things to come their way rather than maybe like give up on a route because, well, it's not getting to me now. It can't possibly get here. And those are things that they can continue to have designs for their offense that make the most of JJ McCarthy's abilities. You just have to wonder, is Jim Harbaugh going to hold him back? And you bring up my Jim Harbaugh theory. When you mentioned that, that's the first time I had thought about that with JJ McCarthy, maybe ever, because I guess that tells you how much I think of JJ McCarthy, that I don't even think Jim Harbaugh can screw him up, but he can hold him back. I don't know that he can screw him up.
Yeah, he could hold him back schematically. And the other thing that I think is a question is, you're throwing the ball downfield, and it's like, wow, look at him hitting all these guys downfield, and it's like, okay, what you don't see on the TV screen? Any defenders, I mean, you can throw lots of balls downfield in shorts and a t-shirt in June when there's no defenders on the field, and so now all they've really added is some fans in the stands and some pads. Other than that, they were kind of working on air a lot of that time on Saturday, and to be completely fair, C.J. Stroud was also throwing basically on air. I mean, the throw to Emeka Egbuka for a touchdown, like right between the hash marks, right after halftime, I think, was essentially, the same thing. It was just, that looked very much like the Roman Wilson throw to open the game, where it's just, there's no one there. Donovan Edwards on his ball down the right sideline. He's 3 yards clear of the defender. Let's see what it looks like when there's better coverage there. Let's see what it looks like when the defense is maybe throwing some more confusing looks at him. there's lots of ways that this is not going to look like 6 of 6 for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns in the second quarter. He will probably not do that every single game this year. But it's, I mean, we're not going to know any more about him for another couple weeks, because I think their earliest game that's even kind of interesting is Maryland, I think, is the kind of the first one, and that's that'll be more of a test for the defense than it will be for McCarthy. I guess we'll see, what does it look like can these receivers get this kind of separation when they're playing like Iowa? Because Iowa's not going to be a challenge for the Michigan defense, but, Ken O'Keefe does his usual stuff on, he's the defensive coordinator, right? He's the defensive coordinator still, I think, Ken O'Keefe. He kind of like does his thing, and it's just, you're going to play some 3 deep, and you're going to just do everything very fundamentally sound. You're not going to be confusing. You're just going to do it fundamentally well. So can these receivers get separation against that kind of a defense, with better defensive players or more fundamentally sound defense? Can they get that separation there? And if they can't, can JJ McCarthy fit the ball into kind of smaller windows? That'll be kind of interesting to see. And he'll have tests kind of throughout the season, but so far he has not been tested, but he has passed.
Well, and you see Cade McNamara come in the second half, throw deep and get it intercepted. So, while it is a bad defense he's facing, comparatively, he still outplayed Cade McNamara when McNamara got in there. By the way, Tom, did you see Iowa, I believe, is a 20.5-point favorite this week against Nevada? Nevada is
the over-under 19?
It might be. Nevada lost to, I believe, Incarnate Word this past week. So if there ever was a game where Iowa could score 21 points and cover, it would be this one, as long as the defense scores at least once, I think. That's a game that I don't even think Iowa fans can stomach. But, Tom, anything else that you wanted to discuss with this game? Because I don't know how much else there is to discuss. Defensive guys still running around as expected. We'll see more of exactly who they want to play at the right times and against the proper opponents, if you will, down the road. But this one was just everybody go out and have fun type of day.
Yeah, my only note on defense was the first drive of the game. Hawai'i ran the ball twice for nothing, and then the third play was 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9. And Jalen Harrell hit their quarterback so hard as he was throwing the ball. He was on the far hash mark, and the ball went directly down the line down the yard line where the quarterback was, just straight across the field, all the way out of bounds from the far hash mark. It was like, I know his arm did some of that to propel that ball forward, but still, that is getting hit. Like, you saw the ball roll out of bounds. It was like, oh, Lord, I hope he's not dead. And he got up and ran off the field. It was like, ooh, boy, that was... That felt like that was going to be sort of a microcosm of the whole game, and then it was. So, Michigan versus Hawaii. Oh, you know what? We should give Michigan fans some credit, because this was a game that was a nothing opponent at night, delayed by rain, and that stadium was, the top of the student section, top, 10 rows, 12 rows, whatever, were empty. But Michigan has had games in the 100,000 attendance streak where the air quotes get a little bigger, like. As long as everyone was there twice for the 2014 Maryland game, yes, the 100,000 attendance streak is still alive. Sure, that was like a legitimate, good for you. That is an energized fan base showing up against a crappy opponent. Weather delayed game, like that is super easy to just say, you know what, we're just going to stay at the tailgate, or we're just going to stay at the bar, or we're just going to pack it up and go home. Did not do that. That was impressive. I think they didn't do the banner thing. Did they not do the banner thing?
Yeah, I heard that they did not.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting to me. I mean, they're kind of rushing that out. That just feels like you probably could have done that. That's not, marching the whole marching band out there or something like that. That was a little surprising to me that they decided to forego that. But yes, the Michigan fans deserve a lot of credit for sticking that out, because that was, you go back to the Utah game in 2016, I think, when there was a long weather delay, or Maryland, was it Utah or Maryland? I think it was Utah, and they lost. There was a long weather delay in the second part, the second half of the game, and it was like there were 14 Michigan fans in the stands after that one. That was, Saturday was a fairly full house. That was impressive, and probably a good indication of how energized that Michigan fan base is right now.
Yeah, they definitely were excited to see JJ McCarthy and that era begin. Also give fans credit, these Michigan fans shaking their keys while the weather is not great. Like, they could be, lightning could be in the area. They're putting the keys up in the air. We know what happens when you do that. So credit to all of those brave souls as they risk life to create noise that once belonged in their pockets. So good job on them. I think that will do it then for this episode of the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. Got you up to date on what's going on at Michigan. It's just JJ McCarthy, and then everything else will fall into place. So that will do it. Remember, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Check it out. That's where Tom and I are now. Tom, the morning show, who are you having on tomorrow?
The plan right now is to have Mark Givler on to talk. He was on the road all weekend, following a lot of. I think he went to 4 high school football games over the weekend. They had, and including some, potentially intriguing running back targets for the class of 2023. If Ohio State wants to add a second running back to the class, so he got to see some of those guys in person. So we'll. The plan is to talk to Mark. We'll see if he's back in town and ready to chat. But that's the plan for the Tuesday morning show.
Yeah, I believe we went and saw the best player in Ohio in the class of 2024, and Aaron Scott from Springfield. I think others aren't maybe. We'll see if others catch on with that ranking. Mark really liked him, and the 2024 running back as well that he saw. So check that out. Give that a listen as well if you prefer the podcast version. Buckeyes tomorrow morning. And again, come join us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. Check us out. We're there on the message board as well to interact and touch base with you. So check it out. See if you like it. If you don't, that's fine, but you will. And that will do it for today. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.